All right, we are recording, so you are being recorded. If you decide to participate in today's activity, just keep that in mind. This is being recorded. A lot of people watch for recording. I'm in a situation where I have to do stuff like this during the day because my commitments are such that I don't work at night anymore. I used to. I did that for a really, really long time. And I don't do that anymore. Unless in very special occasions, somebody invites me to speak on a team call, something like that. Other than that, I don't work in the evenings. I shut things down when it's time to shut things down. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's why I'm doing this kind of in the middle of the day and a little bit of an impromptu situation. Mainly what I really want to do today is talk to you about how to craft a vision for your life. And we're going to go through an exercise that is really the combination of a bunch of different seminars that I've done over time. But the real core of it is a seminar that I went to with Chris Reed in 2011. And many of you guys know Chris. If you don't, you should. Multiple-time elite coach, fantastic guy, former cop. And this seminar was really where I got to really connect with Chris and get to know Chris on a real deep level. We've been really good friends ever since. If you've ever been through anything like this, you sort of can't help but bond with somebody as you start to talk about the next 1 year, the next year of your life, the next 5 years of your life, and the next 10 years of your life. And really a lot of what we're going to talk about extends beyond 10 years. Hopefully you can see that if you can successfully map out the next 10 years, or at least most of the next 10 years of your life, that will have a cascading effect to the next 15 years of your life and the next 20 years and the next 30 years of your life. And one of the reasons I'm revisiting this now and sharing this content with you, there's really two reasons. One, I'm about to hit year 5 where I'm at.
Good afternoon, I'm in physical therapy. Can I help you?
I'm about to hit year 5 of vision that I created, and I really want, and a lot has changed in my life, and I want to update those things. And so I started to kind of revisit this. I'm also going to be doing this for a group of people who are attending a leadership retreat that I'm doing for our team in 11 days. Yeah, about 11 days, 10 days, 10 days. Yay. So that'll be awesome. And I am 9 days. It's creeping up on me. Anyway, so I wanted to revisit this stuff and just to kind of give you guys some context. What I see more than anything else with people who try to get into a business like ours and try to have some success building a business like ours is that they lack this sort of vision. And really, it's not even about people in our business. You'll see really nothing I'm going to talk to you about today has anything to do with Beachbody. And I don't really care if Beachbody is your source of inspiration, motivation, income, whatever. I don't really care. It's not really what it's about. It's more about helping you ask the right questions. And so what we're going to do today is really go through a lot of that stuff. And I'm going to ask you to think about some things. No real hard work today. Today is just about thinking big. And then part 2, we'll get into the meat and bones of how you go about crafting a vision for your life. This is the notebook that I used with my seminar with Chris that we did. And it's a really cool notebook, actually. I've been going through it lately and looking back at a lot of things. And there's letters to Carl in here. There's notes from books that I read. There's a letter forgiving somebody who really did something shitty. And there's a lot of really kind of cool stuff in here. And so my point in telling you that is save your notebooks, especially the ones that sort of center around life-changing events where a light goes on for you. Save those things. Take good notes. So here's kind of the exercise in a nutshell, and then I'm going to read you actually the 5-year vision that I have for my life. what we're going to do is we're going to look at 13 different areas of your life. I'm going to ask you to think about those areas and ask some different questions around that. And hopefully that's going to help you to develop a vision for your life. Ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to write it out as if it all happened and as if it is all true. So you're going to write a narrative of the future of your life as if it has happened. And so what's interesting about this for me is that this particular seminar was in December of 2011. My daughter Simone, her birthday is December 5th. And so I was actually driving home from this seminar on her birthday. And so I raced home it was in Arizona. It's a 6.5 hour drive. I probably made it in 5.5. And I raced home to get home for her birthday. But that's where I was on her birthday. So when I was asked to write this narrative of my life at 1, 5, and 10 years, I did it. I opened each year as a letter to her. So I'll just read you what my life is supposed to look like on December 5th of 2016. And then I'll sort of stop and comment on a few things and give you some thoughts on just different things that have happened or haven't happened and a little comment on them. So December 5th, 2016, happy sweet 16, Simone. I'm so proud of the young woman you've become. You're on your way to a great college experience at a top school, armed with all the tools you need to be successful. True. Nick, my son, is 13 now, and he has a tight-knit group of good friends. That is also true. At the time, he was really struggling to sort of build friendships with people, and they support each other as they grow. He loves sports and excels in school. Doesn't really love sports, but that's his choice, not mine. His reputation is impeccable. Very true. Everyone that knows him thinks he's an outstanding kid. My son decided to get into scouts instead of sports, which has been completely awesome for us. Has helped him overcome, I think, a lot of the issues that he was struggling with. He was just struggling with behavioral issues, and they just don't put up with that shit in Boy Scouts. And so that's been really good for him, and he does have that tight-knit group of friends, which is so important to him. Here's what's interesting. I'll preface this a little bit. Many of you guys know me, you follow me, you know kind of what's gone on in my life. You know that I got divorced. When was it? I guess it was official earlier this year, but really it's been going on for like a year and a half. We just kind of drug our feet and weren't in a big hurry to get that done. And that's one of those things that I thought about doing this and I thought, wow, I know my vision didn't include getting divorced. And so I went back and I read what I actually wrote. Here's what I wrote about Monica. Monica and I are better than ever. We've traveled the world building Beachbody. I've learned Spanish with her. Not true, because we don't really have that Spanish market. I've learned Spanish with her help, and together we've seen some amazing places. Taking the kids along has been a lot of fun. We communicate our needs easily and openly. We each accept responsibility for our roles in our relationship. Here's the thing about that. That's 100% true. I read that earlier today, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, it doesn't say, like, I have this fantastic marriage. What it says is that I communicate openly and honestly with her and that we have a great relationship, which is really true. And I could have never really envisioned that that's the way this was going to go down. Certainly not something that I planned. I think it's interesting that what I wrote here is, except for the Beachbody International bit, which is totally out of my control, is really, really true. So keep going. Beachbody has grown internationally. No, that didn't happen. Monica and I collectively earn in excess of $1 million per year with Beachbody. That's probably true. I don't know. We're not to the end of this year. It has been true in past years. So I think we'll probably get there again this year, and you can insert your little disclaimer over that. We use this money to help charitable organizations, including our foundation. We don't have a foundation, but we do give a lot of money to charity. Our team is amazing. We've taught them how to teach, and they carry the legacy forward. Our culture is strong, and those that identify with it thrive. That is very, very true. Some of you may have noticed there's a little bit of a slowdown going on right now. It's kind of funky, especially in the United States. I think a lot of it just has to do with culturally what's going on. This election has been the most nightmarish thing I've seen for a really long time. But our team is still super, super tight. And we taught them how to teach. And that's been like the number one thing that has helped them move forward. Now, here's some shit that didn't happen. My work on childhood obesity is significant. At the time, I had this big bent that I was going to get on this train about childhood obesity. It's making a big difference. Schools throughout Southern California have changed and we're growing healthier kids. That's making a big difference. People from my tribe, reading Tribes with Carl at the time, Seth Godin's book, have picked up the cause and affected change in their own backyard. That didn't happen. At the time I was really into this whole childhood obesity thing and I thought that was a major cause in my life, and it didn't happen. So, we never got there. I get to spend a lot of time with my mom and my brothers. We all live near each other and we make a point to see each other often. I'm glad to mentor them both and help them achieve their potential. The prospect of being an uncle is very exciting. So my oldest brother is 29. He actually lives in San Francisco, but he travels a lot. He was here 2 weeks ago. Tonight, I'm going to go have dinner with my 99-year-old grandparents and my mom, whose birthday it was yesterday, and my other brother, who's 24 and about to go in the Navy SEALs. So that's very true. As time passes in Coronado, we're very relaxed. We're starting to think about the condo. I'll talk about that in just a second, and have been saving for several years towards that end. Paying cash for the 2 units will feel really good if and when we decide that's what we want to do. Living overseas may be an option as well. I can work from anywhere, and our team has international roots, so my location has little to do with its growth or mine. That is actually true. I know we have some people from Canada here, and we have grown internationally since I wrote that. We've just grown into Canada. It's not as big as I thought it was going to be. This is the condo. I went and got floor plans for 2 condos that I was going to buy in a condo unit we were living in at the time and attach. So I had floor plans for what I was going to do and where I was going to live. Here's what I learned. I have way too much shit to live in a condo. I have way too much shit. I have 5 bikes. I have 4 surfboards. I need a gym. I just have way too much shit to live in a condo. And after a while, I get really tired of the building manager telling me what to do. And so condo life, as it turns out, is not for me. But that was an important thing. At the time, it seemed like a great idea. We were living in this amazing condo. We had the one that I was looking at was right on the beach. This unbelievable view of the beach and the surf. It's right where I surf and everything. And it seemed like at the time a great idea. My grandparents never cease to amaze me. At 99, I think they will live forever, which is probably true. They are both 99 now as well. My fitness is better than ever as I approach 45. I've been back to France for the Tour de France twice. I've actually only been once. Taking time to ride 2 of the iconic climbs, which I haven't done. I've also gone to see Flanders, which is another bike race, and ridden the key parts of the course. Cycling was important to me at the time. It is not anymore. Surfing is still a blast. It's one of the last no-phone zones for me. I choose not to take my waterproof smartphone with me. So I saw waterproof smartphones coming, which we actually have now. I still use Beachbody's home fitness programs and cross-train for all my sports. At almost 45, I can still hang with them all. That has enabled me to do the San Diego International Triathlon 9 years in a row, and I've broken the 2-hour mark twice. That didn't happen, and that's kind of the end of where I was. I think I probably ran out of time. That didn't happen. At the time, I was super into triathlon, and I really thought that's what I really wanted to do with my life. And then I had moved to San Diego, but I'd only probably lived here for about 6 months. And I just got into surfing, and the surfing bug bit me. And as I revised my vision, a lot of it is going to have to do with surfing, and wherever I live is going to have to be near somewhere that I can surf, because it's just consumed my life in a way that triathlon never really could. So that's the 5-year version. I won't bore you with the 1 and 10-year versions. But that's the idea here, is that ultimately what you're going to be doing is you're going to be writing out a narrative of your life as if it were true and had already happened. Understanding that there are some things, sorry for the jet, Navy's busy right now. Understanding that your priorities are going to change. What you believe is important in your life right now may not be important in 5 years or 10 years. But when you write a lot of that down, I go through and I look at that and I go, a lot of that shit happened. It didn't happen necessarily the way that I thought it would. Certainly my, marriage breaking up was not something that I envisioned happening. But my relationship with Monica is really interesting to me, that my relationship with Monica is essentially what I wrote down in my vision for this time in my life. Now, that to me carries a lot of weight and has a lot of power. It's also given me something I read this a lot, and it's given me a place to go to find some direction when life seems confusing. And in particular, when it seems overwhelming or really, really challenging, that's the number one thing that I think it's really given me. It's like this lighthouse in the night, right? And like, sometimes you get lost and you're like, shit, where do I go? Where do I go? And you're looking around trying to find some landmarks or whatever. And there's just this lighthouse in the distance that keeps saying, go this way, go this way, go this way, go this way. And what I see a lot of people doing is they just kind of wander around in the dark. They don't know where they're going. They don't have this clear path to where they want to get to. Part of that, I think, is because people look at an exercise like this and they go, well, I don't really know what I want. I couldn't write something like that. Maybe I could write the 1 year. The 1 year is pretty easy. The 5 years is a little more challenging. 10 years is tough. 10 years is really tough to think about where you want to be in 10 years. But the idea is really to get focused on that 10-year mark so that you can reverse engineer your life, right? And you can say, okay, if in 10 years I want to be here, where do I need to be in 5 years? Where do I need to be next year in order for that to even have a shot at happening, okay? So I told you there would be a few agreements, and there are. Before I get into the 13 areas that I really want to talk about and sort of the different questions that I want to give you guys, and I'll post a copy of my notes as well, so you'll have access to this stuff. But the real agreements that I want you to make are with yourself. I said this as I posted this opportunity to come and do this. And by the way, I'll just say it's interesting to me. I don't have this built into my vision, but I really do appreciate the faith that you guys have in not just me, but in a lot of us. And I know I think I can pretty safely speak for a lot of the different leaders, in both the Fit GC group as well as the Training Camp Live group. And there's a lot of crossover between the two, that you put your faith in us to lead you guys in the right direction. And a lot of you are the future leaders. And that's why we do these things. If I, in order for this thing to go the way I want it to go, it has to work without me. And the only way for that to happen is for you guys to step into leadership roles. And the only way for that to really happen is for you to want to do that and for you to craft it into something like this. So agreements. The agreements are really with yourself. The first one is to be really honest. That's the biggest thing I think you can do to really help yourself with this process. Be honest. I think it's very tempting to look at something like a 1, 5, and 10-year vision for your life and think about outside influencers and, maybe what's going to make you look cool or what's going to get you accepted by a certain group of people. If that's where you're coming from, just be honest about that. Okay. I think that's not something I would do, but that's something that if that's important to you, just be honest about it. Be honest about it. If you want, if you write into your vision, I want a jet, you better know why you want a fucking jet and why that is important to you. What happens with exercises like this or vision boards or any of this sort of stuff as you think about how you really want to live your life is a lot of people include things that are not important to them because of how it will make other people see them. And then they believe, oh, well, if people think I'm cool, then I'll have this great sense of myself, and then I'll be able to sort of move forward with this other stuff in my life. That's generally not true, okay? If it's true for you, just be honest about it. That's what I'm really encouraging you to do, because my guess is if that's true, you're going to look back at something like this in 5 years or 1 year or 10 years, And you're going to start to recognize, gosh, that just much like triathlon for me, I just decided triathlon wasn't important in my life anymore. Surfing took its place in a big, big way. And that's okay. You know, this isn't a contract, you know, that if you don't fulfill every single word you write down, you're a complete failure, which I think is the other agreement. Give yourself permission to fail, you know, give yourself some permission to fail, which kind of ties into the next agreement, which is really to believe that this can happen for you. There was a comment that I got when I started to talk about this the other day, which is really what kind of sparked me to do this Zoom call today, about, you know, I'm okay crafting a vision for my life, but I have a problem and a hard time believing that it will happen. You're going to have some faith. Okay. You're going to have some faith in yourself. What I'll tell you from my perspective is that how I did that was first allowing myself to fail, really allowing myself to fail, which then allowed me to take some risks, put myself out there and take some risks. Allowing myself to screw it up a little bit allowed me to take some risks. What happened was, as I started taking risks, things started working out for me. And over time, I developed a lot of self-confidence, and I developed this mindset that I'm probably right. I'm probably right about this. And so when I tackle things like a new task or whatever, like I'm launching a new campaign this week, and I have a great degree of confidence in it. And if it doesn't work, I know I'll learn something and fix it and make it better, and then it'll work. But I have confidence that it's going to work right out of the box. That's not something that I had 5 years ago, 6 years ago. You know, 5 and 6 years ago is when I started to develop that and started to develop this idea that I'm actually pretty smart and I actually work really hard. And if I write something down, it's probably going to happen because my mind is really powerful. But that's not something I was born with. That's not something I was taught in school. That's not something I learned, you know, from the people who raised me. You know, I was taught to aim really low so that I wouldn't be disappointed. That was like the narrative of, which may sound weird if you know my background, and having gone to law school and coming from a family where I'm a 4th generation lawyer. But that's what I was taught. Aim low and then you won't be disappointed. As is counter to how I believe now and how I teach people now, but that took time. So I think that's a really important key. The last thing in the last agreement is to make sure you're building consensus with the people in your life. My girlfriend and I went out to dinner and she asked me what I was working on, and I told her about this. And then we started to talk and we started to say, okay, well, you know, where do you want to be in a year? You know, where do you want to be in 5 years? Let's get on the same page. If this relationship is really going to move forward and going to last a long time, let's make sure we're on the same page. Let's make sure that I'm not off trying to, you know, climb Mount Everest. And meanwhile, you hate the cold. You know, let's do this together. And that's really the big important thing, is to really build consensus. So here's part of the exercise and part of what I want you guys to start to do. Okay. And again, if you're just so gung-ho that you feel like I want to go write the narrative of my life at 1, 5, and 10 year increments, awesome. Go do it. I'd like you to pause though. And I'd like you to take some time, and I'd like you to think about it yourself. And then I'd like you to talk with those significant people in your life who, some of which maybe you need in order for your vision to come true. Like Carl is all over this thing. Carl is absolutely all over this thing. This was just after Jeff Hill had joined the company. So Jeff, I don't think I really mentioned in here, but my relationship with those two guys has been so important in making the aspects of this thing that relate to that part of my life come true. So, you know, think about that. Who are those people, right? And can I build consensus with them and making sure that they're on board with me going in the same direction? Second thing is just to think about it for yourself. As we go through these things, I want you to take notes, and I want you thinking about things in terms of 1, 5, and 10. So I'm going to give you, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go through these 13 different areas, start asking you some questions to think about. But when you write it down and you're making notes, list the category, and then put a number 1 and something that's going to happen in a year, and number 5 and a few things that maybe need to happen in a year for you, and then number 10 and a few things that need to happen in a year for you. So kind of bullet point it out as you're brainstorming, And again, building consensus is so important. I'll use the example of a jet again. If I say I want a jet, right? But that's something I need everybody to be on board. If your dreams are that big, you need everybody on board with you. If you want a new bicycle, that's maybe a different thing. Okay, so let's go through the first one of these 13 different areas that define your life and shape your vision is your relationship with self. And there's a really important reason that I started here. And there's a quote from Zig Ziglar that I think is just so on point. It's actually I think it's my cover photo on my Facebook profile right now. And the quote says that you cannot consistently perform in a manner that is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. Let me say that again. You cannot perform consistently in a manner that is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. Gets back to the topic I was talking about just a minute ago, right? A lot of this is about faith. It's about belief. If you don't believe this is going to happen, you're wasting your time. You're writing words, okay? You're writing words. You cannot act consistently in a manner that is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. So your relationship with self is really the first one. What does that look like for you now? Think about how you view yourself now. Are you the type of person who walks around with a hammer and beats yourself up? Are you a really highly self-confident person? There's all types of people, and there's the entire range on this call. I just guarantee you the entire range of people is doing this. And I guess that's the other thing I should say is that some of these are really going to be like, oh my God. Others are going to be like, I'm good. Like one of them we're going to get into is health and fitness. A lot of you are going to be like, I'm good. But if you notice, I wrote what it looked like at age 45 for me here when I was 40. Or maybe I was 39, I don't remember. I guess I was 40 at the time. So that's the first one, is your relationship with yourself, and how do you see yourself, and what do you want to change about that? And then, start thinking about that. If your goal in 10 years is to have a really good relationship with yourself, to look in the mirror and see somebody who you're really proud of and who you really like and who you have a lot of confidence has the ability to accomplish whatever else we're going to talk about, what do you need to do over the next year to make that happen? If you're there, awesome. We can probably move on. Again, be honest. If you're not there, what are the things that you need to do in order to get there? Okay, they may be seminars, they may be books you need to read, it may be relationships you need to build with other people. I don't know. You. I just am asking questions. So that's the first one, relationship with self. Second one, personal relationships. All right, your personal relationships. I did not recognize the importance of interpersonal relationships. When I did this exercise, I think I'd kind of come to the conclusion that that's probably where my life would be most important. I had a conversation just the other day with a friend of mine who is a finance guy and lives overseas, and he's incredibly isolated. All of his friends are from work. He has no, other than me and a few other people who live thousands and thousands of miles away, he has no one to go grab a beer with, who he doesn't work with. And what do? When you go out with your guys from work, you talk about work. That's where I was a little bit more than 5 years ago. This is probably like 7 years ago. My dad died in 2007. After he died, I completely isolated myself, and I believed that that was fine. As it turns out, that's not fine, because my life was totally incomplete without the personal relationships that I have with people like Jimmy. I was the type of person I was really afraid to build those relationships with people, because what if they screwed me over? Sorry, I got a weird notice on no, I don't want to leave the meeting. Sorry, that was weird. Something happened. Anyway, so personal relationships. What do your personal relationships look like now? What will they look like in a year? What will they look like in 5 years? And what will they look like in 10 years? For me, I started to think about relationships and I said, I want people I can trust. First and foremost, I need people around me who I can trust. I need people around me who operate with integrity. I don't want to be surrounded by a bunch of shady people who do shady shit, because inevitably I'll end up doing shady shit. I want to be surrounded by people who are good, in the case of men, good dads. That's something that's really important to me. If I surround myself with people who are strong fathers, I'll be a better father. That'll make my kids better, right? I sort of thought about it in terms of, I want to have like an army of uncles, right? Like really strong uncles, like not drunk uncle in the corner, but like really strong uncles that my kids and I could go to when we struggled. A support system is really what I sort of thought about. I don't know what you want for this in your life. What I know is that it's incredibly important. What I know is that those personal relationships that I have with other people are more important to me than anything I own, including my surfboards. Anything I own has no bearing on my life that's even close to the personal relationships that I have with people. It's by far the most fulfilling part of my life. So that's the second one. The third one is your professional relationships. Who do you need to know? The saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know is incredible. It is absolutely 100% true. Most things happen because of who you know, not what you know. I thought I could survive being the smart guy, right? I'm a lawyer, I have a big fancy job, I work at big fancy law firms, and that's all I need to do. I don't need professional relationships. It just doesn't work. And especially if, as we start talking about this, you come to the conclusion that what you really want to do is be a full-time Beachbody coach and be in a business like this, professional relationships are incredibly important. What do they look like? What do they look like for you now? What do you want them to look like in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? And what are the things that you need to do in order to get there? Okay, if your goal is to have these incredible relationships with people, but in professional relationships, but you don't spend any time networking, you don't spend any time figuring out who those people are who you need to connect to, going back to Carl, that's why Carl is in this thing so much. It's because I recognize, wow, a lot of what I want to do, I need Carl's buy-in. Like, I can't do it without Carl. He runs the company. Had Jeff been a little bit, I think that Jeff been a bigger part of the company at the time, Jeff would have been all over this thing. And as it turns out, my relationship with Jeff is really important to the things that I want to accomplish. Professional relationships, number 3. Number 4, spiritual relationships. This is always one where, not always one. This is often one where we run into a little bit of a snag because people think that I'm automatically talking about going to church every Sunday. I don't go to church every Sunday. Okay? I have a deep personal relationship with God. I talk to God a lot. I do it a lot in the water. Every time I surf, I pray before I go in the water. And then often something will happen that causes me to have a conversation. That's me and how I connect with my spirituality. I don't know what it looks like for you. I don't know what you want it to look like, okay? Some of you who are watching this, you guys are young. You're 10 years younger than I am. I'll be 45 in February. Those are 10, some of you 15 years or more younger than I am. I don't know what your spiritual relationships look like now or what you want them to look like. I just know they're really important. I know they're really, really important. This one took me a while. There's not a lot in here that has to do with my spiritual relationships. That's just something that I'd figured out on my own, or maybe it was through doing this, that would be very, very important to me and into my future. So that's another area that I want you to think about. And again, some of these you're really going to connect with. Some of them you're kind of going to go, whatever. I think 5 years ago when I wrote this all and we went to the seminar, I kind of went, I don't know if that's really important in my life. Now it's one of the most important relationships that I have. So life changes, things change. What do I know? There's a reason it's on this list, and it's because it's important. Okay, so that's number 4, spiritual relationships. Number 5, your family. And this is another one. Again, for some of you guys who are younger, you don't have kids, you're kind of going, I don't know, whatever. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Your family's broader than just your, significant other, spouse, whatever, and your kids, if you have kids. It's much broader than that. And I want you to think in terms of that. It's one of the reasons my grandparents are mentioned twice in my 5-year vision about them living to age 99. They're a part of my family. Your family exists. It's why my brothers are here. It's why I talk about having strong relationships with my brothers, because when we started to talk about this family issue, I recognized that's a major source of positive energy for me, is my family. And there were things I had to do. At the time, my mom and I did not have a good relationship. Really, my mom and I really struggled. There were a number of things that happened that I won't get into here when I was younger that I never really resolved. As I went through this, I recognized my relationship with my mom was incredibly important, and I had to fix it. And I went to work fixing it. So one of the first things I did is I went and that's more of a 1-year vision. If you were to read the 1-year vision, I talk about my mom and I talk about my relationship. I have a great relationship with my mom. And I do. I had to remedy that relationship though. At the time, it wasn't a great relationship. It was incumbent upon me to recognize the importance of that, because somebody asked me the right fucking questions, and B, then put together a plan. That became urgent for me. I was like, if I don't have a relationship with my mom, it's going to affect my relationship with my grandparents and my relationship with my brothers, and ultimately my children's relationship with their grandmother. And that's not cool. So I got to go fix that. And it became a major thing for me. And it's one of the things I think that I saw the most immediate impact out of this was in my relationship with my mom. So and if you don't, if you're in a place where that's not the case for you, you've got your relationships are great. That's awesome. Write that down. Write that down. If they're good now, you want them to be good in 5 years. You want them to be good in 10 years. If they're not good now, you want them to be good in a year. You want them to be good in 5 years. You want them to be good in 10 years. Think about what your family looks like. For those of you who are younger, if you're 25, I'm asking you to think about life at 35. That might be a challenge for you, but if you have this lighthouse that constantly tells you which direction to go in, you're much more likely to get where you want to go. So think about your family. What do you want it to look like? If you're a young single guy, do you want to be married? Do you want to have kids? Well, who do you want to get married to? What does it look like? If you're already in a relationship, is that relationship where you want it to be? And if not, what can you do to change it? What can you do to help that? Again, I go back to the paragraph I read you about Monica. The reason that's in here, we're really struggling to communicate. So we went to work on that. We both agreed we need to learn how to communicate. Again, it doesn't look like I thought it would look like 5 years ago. I didn't know that what was going to happen was we were going to get divorced. And through the process of the divorce, we'd go to marriage counseling together and we would learn how to communicate. But that's what happened. And I talked to her just this morning. Okay? We have a good relationship now. As weird as that may sound, I have a strong feeling that it's because that's what I wrote in here, because that's what I wanted. All right, so that's number 5, family. Number 6, liberty. Liberty is number 6. Liberty is really about your control over the most important asset that you possess, which is your time. All right, 5 years ago, I'm trying to think. I was maybe about a year and a half removed from being fired from the law firm that I was working on. If you guys haven't heard of that story, I'll have to tell it another time. But I got fired. The economy collapsed in 2008. In March of 2010, I got fired. And in December of 2011, I was very much enjoying being fired. Not because I was making a ton of money. I was doing pretty good. 2011 and 10 and 11 were good years for us. Partially because I got fired and I had to it lit a major fire under my ass. I think that's one of those big things that, it's hard to recreate that level of urgency. When you're making $150,000 a year and you get canned, you need to find $150,000 a year or you're going to lose some shit. And that's the situation I was put in. But what I was really enjoying, what I recognized more than anything else, I love having control over my time. And I recognize I want that for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life, I want to decide whether or not I'm going to work today with very few limitations, right? Of course, there are going to be days where, you set up a meeting with somebody on tomorrow's Thursday, right? You set up a meeting on Thursday at 1:00. I pretty much got to be at that meeting, right? That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the ability to say, oh, the surf's good today. Well, I'm going to go wherever I need to go in order to have an enjoyable experience surfing, because I recognize, and we'll get into hobbies I recognize that it feeds that spiritual relationship that I have with God, which is a very important thing to me, and puts everything in alignment, helps me put all the puzzle pieces in place and make sure that everything fits nice and that my life isn't all wacky and confusing and out of control, right? It's what I do for enjoyment, and it's great exercise for me. And if the surf is pumping, I want to be able to go do that. On days like today, when I wake up, it's overcast, it's windy, there's no waves. Great. What do? I get my ass up, I go to work. And I schedule a call like this one. Okay? A lot of people message me and ask me to make sure I record this because they can't be on the call. That right there should be enough to get you to wake up and go, you don't have control over your time. You just don't have control over your time. It is the number one resource you have. It's more important than money. It's more important than really anything else that you possess is your time, because you're limited with how much you have. All right. Again, I said earlier that I appreciate the faith you put into me because I've been talking for 45 minutes now. You don't get that time back. That's gone. The last 44 minutes are gone. You don't get them back. How do you want to spend that time? What does it look like for you? Now, for some people, they don't feel the way I feel. They're perfectly happy to divide their time up and let certain people control their time. For me, that wasn't okay. And so I had to create a plan and a vision, and that lighthouse that always calls me, that involved that. And everything I do is informed by that. Everything I do. It's why I'm recording this call here at 1 p.m. Pacific instead of doing it at night. I don't fucking work at night anymore because that's not in alignment with where I want to be and how I want to control my liberty and my time. So how do you want to use your time? Whether it's about fun or otherwise, what's that look like? Do you control it? Does somebody else control it? Maybe you're okay with somebody else controlling it. That's fine. It's your life, not my life. Don't say shit and write shit to please me or anybody else. It's about you and how you want to live your life. And there's trade-offs. Okay, there's trade-offs. The trade-off to giving up control over some of your time is probably some security and safety. If that makes you feel safe and feeling safe is important to you, that's the direction you should go. I'm just asking the questions. So that's number 6, liberty. Number 7, health and fitness. I told you there might be a 1 or 2 in here that you're not real worried about. You got control over your health and fitness. Great. If you're where you want to be with your health and fitness now, I still want you to write down in a year that you're where you are now or better. I still want you to write down in 5 years that you're here where you are now or you're better. I want you to do it in 10 years. Your health is so important to your growth and your development and your ability to have the energy that you're going to need in order to develop this vision for your life. So number 7 is health and fitness. And think about when you're thinking about health and fitness too, consider it not just how you look. Think about how you feel and how you want to feel. Do you sleep well? Do you have all kinds of aches and pains? How do you feel? Think about it in those terms, not so much how you look. Especially for you guys that are younger, I'll just tell you, that becomes less and less important the older you get. Okay? It's more about waking up in the morning and feeling good. So think about it in those terms as you're going through that. Next thing, activities and hobbies. Number 8 is activities and hobbies. How do you want to spend your free time? What are the things you want to do? One of the things I'm really interested in getting involved with over the next 5 years is woodworking. I like building shit. I like creating things. And woodworking is really, really interesting to me. Again, I just go back to, my vision living in a condo. Like you can't have a woodworking shop and live in a condo. It just doesn't work. Right? So I need to be living in a home and they need to be somewhere where I can do something like that, where I've got the space. The house that I'm in now would accommodate that for sure. I've got tons of space here, and I'll always live in a place like this where I have the ability to do stuff like that. Like, not only does it house all my crap, but getting into something like woodworking is a future thing for me and something that I'm really interested in doing. But what is it that you want to do? And are you doing it now? You know, I'm a skier too. At the time, I wasn't skiing, you know, but I grew up, my dad was a ski instructor. I grew up skiing, and I really wanted to spend more time in the mountains. And that is the type of stuff that I talked about as I wrote my vision. At the time, it was like, I was really into triathlon and cycling, and that stuff was what was really important to me. I don't know what's important to you, but my guess is you're not spending enough time doing it. And if you are, awesome, great. Write it down. I still spend X amount of hours doing Y activity in 1 year, and 5 years, and 10 years. So think about your activities and your hobbies. What do you want to get into? What do you want to learn too? I think that's another thing in activities and hobbies. That's why I talked about learning Spanish in here. And I'm still really interested in learning Spanish. My motivation's a little different. My motivation is not that, I want to dominate the Beachbody Latin market. It's more that, which was what it was when I wrote that down. It's more that I'm really interested in living at least part-time in Central America, Costa Rica, somewhere like that. Why? So I can surf. And because my business, I can do my business from anywhere. And even if I'm not a Beachbody coach in 10 years, which I have every reason to expect I will be, but even if I'm not, whatever business I'm in, I'll be able to do it from Costa Rica. And I'll need to learn to speak Spanish. So it's still important to me. Okay, next thing. What a great segue. The next one, number 9, is your home/location. Okay, this is really about where you want to live and how you want to live. That's how I ended up with the condo. I was living in a condo at the time, and I'd only been there for like 4 or 5 months, and it seemed really fantastic. So that's where I came up with the vision. What I write now will be very different than what I wrote then, because I recognize it doesn't accommodate the lifestyle that I really want to live. And I don't like being told what to do. And the building manager just pissed me off endlessly. And I had to get out of that place. But think about this. Most of the time in your life will be spent in your home. A lot of it you're going to be asleep, but most of your time will be spent in your home. If you build a life like mine, you will work from home. You can probably see that's my kitchen. Right around that wall is a kitchen. This is my office. This is my home. This is where I live. This is where I spend most of my time. If I don't like it, it's not going to be very much fun, and I'm going to be pretty damn miserable. So where do you want to live? Think about this in broader terms as well. Do you live in the city that you want to live in? And think about that in broader terms as well. Does the city you live in accommodate how you want to spend your time? You know, like for me, I live in San Diego, and I have a hard time. I don't know whether I'll always live in San Diego, but I'll always live somewhere close to the ocean. But I need to make enough money, which we'll get into in a second, to fly to the mountains so I can ski. And so I can do a lot of other stuff in the mountains because I just love the mountains. If that's part of your vision, you better talk about it. And if part of your vision, if you live in Omaha and you don't want to live in Omaha and you're married, you better talk to your wife about that or your significant other, and get some consensus. Do we want to leave Omaha or wherever it is that you're at? And make sure that you can get that buy-in, because I can tell you, writing stuff down in here, if you're in a relationship like that, solo on your own is a recipe for a lot of problems in your personal relationships, in your family, and those other areas of your life that we've already kind of talked about that are important. So that's number 9. Where do you live and what does it look like? The 1, 5, and 10 years. And if it's a home or a condo or something like that, do you own it or do you rent? I know a lot of people that rent because they don't want to be tied down. They like, part of their vision for their life is that they move around a lot because they want to experience different things. And they've set up a life because of their job and their kids that they can do that. And maybe they're homeschool. That's something important to consider. I also know a lot of people, the same type of people, they homeschool. So they're not tied to a school. They can go wherever they want to go, because that liberty aspect combined with their family aspect and the personal relationships aspect have all come together to create a life that's what they do. So if I ask them where they want to live, they'd say, oh, I want to live here, 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 and here, all in 1 year. So I'm going to rent. Great, cool. That's what you want? Write it down. All right, next one, 10. Number 10 is your career. The second most time you will probably spend in your life is at work, okay? Number one place you're going to spend most of your time, and again, a lot of it's sleeping, is at home. The second most time you're probably going to spend is at work. Well, what's that look like for you? Where do you want to work? What do you want to do for work? Understanding that that's probably where you're going to spend the second most amount of your time in your life, make sure it's something that you like. Again, I don't care if it's Beachbody. That's up to you. Don't try and make me happy or anybody else happy or your upline or whatever. You need to think about these things. I know a lot of people who are fantastic coaches. Chris Ballmer's a great example of this. You know, Chris Ballmer is a fantastic coach. He kicks ass. But he likes working at Quicken Loans Arena because he's a huge Cavs fan and he loves what he does there and he digs that work. So that's his career. Beachbody is a side income for him. Fine. That's his life. I wouldn't want to do that. I don't want to work that much. And I don't want to work for other people. That's another thing I want you thinking about when it comes to career, which ties into the liberty aspect of this. Are you working for yourself or are you working for somebody else? And if your thing is working for somebody else because you gain that safety, that security, that sort of, you know, it makes you feel comfortable and okay, and you don't feel like I'm walking out on the plank and my family's following me, great. Write it down. Write it down. What's it look like? What do you want to do for a living? What's your career look like? Things to think about when it comes to career are, you know, what are you really passionate about? You know, especially if you're younger, what are you super passionate about? Make sure you do something that you're really, really passionate about, and your whole life will be a lot more enjoyable, and you'll do better. Your work, you'll be far more effective at work. So what are you passionate about? What's important to you? What are you upset about? You know, what are you a little pissed off about? You know, maybe there's a spot for you in a cause, right? And that's what's going to really motivate you. And every day, if you're passionate about it, you're going to be able to get out of bed and enjoy what you do. Like, again, I don't have to work every day, but I do because I like what I do. Doing shit like this, I love. So why wouldn't I do it, right? I've just been able to align these things together, and a lot of it is because I have this vision for my life. Next one, income. Really think carefully about income. And here's why. There's the reason we have these 13 areas, and they're organized the way they are, because your income really relates to how you live your life. Okay, this is not like putting together a vision of your life for the next 1, 5, and 10 years is not some kind of magic genie bottle that you rub that instantly just gives you whatever the fuck you want. That's not how this works. If you say that you want to earn in excess of $1 million a year, and I'll tell you too, there's another little side thing I should have mentioned earlier. When you're writing these things, write it in terms of that. Don't say, I make $1 million a year. Say, I make in excess, or I make at least $1 million a year, so that you don't cap yourself. Okay? Milan Jensen, who some of you know is one of the founders of Beachbody, she got a great story about this, where she made out a check. She created a fake check from Beachbody, like not for fraud or anything, but for like a vision board. And she put a number on the check. And her and her husband, Kevin, got to that point and their business just stagnated. It just capped. And she's like, I can't figure it out. She looked over at her desk. There was the check that she had written to her little fake Beachbody check with that exact amount on it. And they had been stuck there for about 6 months. She took that check, created a new one, and left some room for some zeros on it. And their business started to grow. So don't cap yourself. It's probably most important with income, but I think it applies to everything. Anyway, if you say you want something like to earn $1 million a year, understand that you're going to have to work your ass off. That this is not a lottery ticket. This is not some magic genie. You're going to have to work really, really hard. And how is that going to impact the other areas of your life? If you say that you know, as part of liberty and your activities and hobbies, you say that you want to spend 30 hours a week mountain climbing, maybe you need to rethink this income thing, okay? Because that's probably not realistic. Maybe it is in 10 years, though. This is another thing where I want you thinking in this 1, 5, and 10 year. how much money do you need to make now in order to be rock climbing 30 hours a year, hours a week in 10 years? What's your health gonna need to look like now and in 5 years for you to go rock climbing 30 hours a week in 10 years? These are the things that build up to where you wanna go. All these things mesh together, and that's what I want you thinking about with income. It's really tempting to just write down some crazy number. I knew when I was writing down that I'm gonna make $1 million a year that that's a crazy number and I'm gonna have to fucking work like a maniac to get there. And I was okay with it because I knew the work was something that I really loved doing. Now, there were a lot of other trade-offs. Didn't get to spend as much time with my kids. Didn't get to spend as much time with my wife. Maybe that's why my marriage fell apart. I don't know. There's trade-offs. I want you thinking about those things. And again, consensus. If you're in a committed relationship and you have a life partner, they need to be on board with what you're trying to do here. And they need to understand that there are sacrifices that they're going to have to make in order for you to get where you want to go for them. All right, so that's 11, income. Think careful. Number 12, security/investments. I'm asking you to think in 10-year horizon. But what I really want to do, and this question will really sponsor more than that, is where do you really want to be further out in your life? And what do you need to get there? Now, for me, 10 years from now, I'll be 55. At age 55, I have a number that I need to have in the bank. Well, guess what that number does? It influences me each and every day. And certainly once a month when the automatic debit comes out of my account and I put that money in the bank for my future rather than spending it on jet fuel or my Lambo or whatever. Because I know that that's where we're going. Okay, my kids, in 5 years, my kids are going to be off to college. When that happens, my life is going to change a lot. Well, I have a plan for that. I have a plan for where I'm going to be financially in 5 years when my kids go off to college. I need money for their college, first of all, right? Like I got to get college paid for. Second, how much money am I going to need? All right. At that point, what do I want to do? I mean, at that point, if all of this continues and happens the way that I'm writing it out, I can live anywhere in the world. Well, living anywhere in the world can be expensive or super fucking cheap. That's kind of why I'm interested in Central America. It's because it's not crazy expensive. It's pretty cheap down there, right? If my vision for my life in 10 years or in 5 years when my kids graduate is to move to Switzerland, that is incredibly expensive, and I am going to need to work my ass off, make a lot of money, but more importantly, save a lot of money. And that's what I want you thinking about in this area of your life. If my life in 10 years looks like this, how do I support that? Like, don't just make up a bullshit story about what you want it to look like and then not create a plan to support that. You need both. You need to know where you're going and you need to know how much money you're going to need to support that lifestyle. Again, if what's important to you is personal relationships, you don't need a lot of attachments. You don't need a lot of things. You don't need a lot of the things that many of us place a lot of importance on. That's fine. Fine. It's your life. It's your life. But figure out what you want and then what are you going to need to get there? And how's that work? My guess is for those of you who really stick with this and do this, within the next 30, 40 days, you'll have a financial planner on board. You will have somebody who you go sit down with and you say, this is really what I want to do with my life. How much money do I actually need to do that? My financial planner is such an important part of this whole thing. This whole thing, because he's the guy, he's got all the math. I don't really know how much all this shit costs. But he can tell me how much it costs. And when I call him and say, hey, man, here's what I want to do. Okay, great. Here's how we can juggle those things. You can still get to where you want to go, but it's not going to be 10 years. It's going to be 12. If you really stick with this and you really do this and you really follow through with it, within the next 30 to 45 days, you're going to have a financial planner on board. And you're going to have somebody who's telling you, okay, if that's how you want to live your life, awesome. Here are the things you need to do in order to get there. Here's how much money you need. Here's the different types of investments you need to have. How much of that stuff ends up being tax deferred. In other words, you don't get it unless you want to pay a big fucking penalty. You don't get it until you reach retirement age. How much of that, how much cash do you need now? Maybe part of your vision is in the next 5 years, you want to start a new business as a roofer. Cool. How much money are you going to need to do that? Because you can start saving right now to get there. And you're going to have your roofing business in 5 years, and in 10 years, your roofing business is going to look like this. How much money do you need to save next year for that? This little piece of it comes last because in all of the other things that we've built on, it informs all of them. But this is basically, how do I pay for what I want? Okay, so for those of you who are really serious about this, you're going to have somebody on board, or create your own plan. Maybe you're smarter than I. I'm not a math person. I don't like doing that shit. So I have some help with that. The last one, number 13, is tithing. Okay, tithing is about charitable giving. What is important to you? What are the causes that are important to you? And how are you going to contribute to that? Understanding that, I think when we say tithing, we're always thinking in terms of money. Like, how much money are you going to give to whatever these different organizations are? I'll give you an example. My little brother, the one who's the youngest of the two, is 24 now, has always wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Always. That has been, since I can remember, he's always wanted to do that. And he is a crazy driven kid. And when he said that, over 10 years ago for sure. I remember him like when he was 10 wanting to do this. He created a path for himself to get there. There were certain things I did along the way that I could support him. But one of the things that I started to do was to support charities that support Navy SEALs. So that when he did get there, those charities would be a little bit stronger, and they might, hopefully he never needs their help. But if he does, that's there. That's been an important thing for me to help my brother be successful at what he's trying to do. Sorry, somebody's texting me. All right, so that's the last one, tithing. Tithing is not just about money, it's about time. If you have a cause that's important to you and you don't have the money to donate to them, I guarantee you there's some filing you can do, there's a nail you can hammer, there's a board you can paint, there's some shit you can do to contribute to these things. And in doing so, it will make your life better. All right, so we're at a little over an hour now, and those are the 13 areas that I want you looking at. I'll go over them really quickly in case you missed them, and I'll just kind of pop this open for questions really quickly. Number 1, relationship with yourself. Number 2, relationships, your personal relationships with other people. Number 3, your professional relationships. Number 4, your spiritual relationships. Number 5, your family. Number 6, your liberty. In other words, how do you want to spend this time? Number 7, your health and fitness. Number 8, the activities and hobbies that you want to do. Number 9, your home/location. Number 10, your career. Number 11, your income. Number 12, your security/investments, right? Like, how are you going to pay for whatever crazy lifestyle you want to lead? And number 13, tithing, charitable contributions. Those are the 13 areas. Those are the questions. Those are the things I want you guys thinking about. Again, what I suggest you do, and again, I'll post this in the group so you'll have it and you can kind of refer back to it, is that you list the area and then you put in 1 year, this is what I want. In 5 years, this is what I want. In 10 years, this is what I want. And make sure they dovetail with each other. Make sure that the things in a year are going to lead to 5 years, and the things in 5 years are going to lead to 10 years. And if there's an area in your life that's good right now, don't neglect it. That's a huge mistake. Don't neglect this, okay? Put it in there and say, like, my health. 5 years ago, my health was fantastic. Now, my health is fantastic. I wrote it down because I don't want to lose that, right? It doesn't mean that something's where you want it to be right now that you forget it. It's about, okay, this is where I want it to be. Maintain that. Make sure you include it. Okay, so really quickly, I'll just open it up for questions if you guys have any questions. You should be able to unmute yourself. If you can't, maybe type in the chat box. I don't want to unmute everybody because I don't know. Somebody's probably at work and, you don't want me to hear background noise at your office. Questions?
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
So would you suggest then starting with a 10-year and working backwards, or going 1, 5, 10? Because I've done a 20-year vision before, and I thought it was actually pretty powerful starting there and then, like you said, reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So that's what you'd recommend, start at 10 and then go 5, 1?
Yes. Yeah. I think you really want to think about, where you want to be in 10 years or 20. If you want to think in longer term, I think that's fantastic. I really do. And a lot of your 10-year vision should be directed towards kind of moving forward and what happens, right? It's not like, oh, in 10 years, I'm going to have this amazing life and then get hit by a bus. I guess probably not what you want to think about. But yeah, I think that's really a good way to think about some of these things is, this long term. I mean, that's why like they're structured the way they are, is so that you can start thinking about relationships in your life and the people around you and how you interact with them. And you can start thinking about how you want to spend your time. And you can start thinking about work and income. Ultimately, the idea is, where do I want to be in 10 years? And what are the things I need to do? What are the steps I need to take to get there? So yeah, I think that's probably the most productive way to think about things. I'm trying to think of an example of where I wouldn't do that, and I can't really come up with one. So yeah, I think that's probably the most successful way to think about it is, what do you want? And really, again, being honest and being a little bold. It's okay to write something down. Just make sure that you're not dreaming, I don't know. I need to go look at the 10-year one, but I think there's something about owning a jet, flying around. I don't give a shit. I really don't, and even if I did, I'm not willing to work hard enough to get there. I'm just not. I want to spend my time. I want to enjoy my life.
I appreciate this, but when I did my 20-year, this is perfect because I know I reread it again, and I know I did a good job because I got all emotional reading about my kids and where they're going to be. So I really appreciate you taking the time and bringing us back to the forefront, man. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's why I started each one of these as a letter to my daughter. Again, it was her birthday. The following day, it was her birthday, so it seemed to just make sense. But it also just grounded me into that, like, what's really important, right? Like, what is really important? My family. Like, that's what's really important. My kids and my relationship with them. And it was a very emotional thing writing it. I mean, I can vividly remember sitting in this restaurant that Chris and I were sitting in and having a beer and writing these letters and getting really emotional and talking to Chris about his kids and his life and where he wanted to go and the things that he wanted to do and his direction. And I think it should be an emotional thing. You're thinking about how you really want to live your life, So I think that's a really good tip is, build some emotional connection to it. And it'll help you to really be able to make sure that it's going to be real. Again, it's like, I don't have any emotional connection to owning a jet. I have a real strong emotional connection to what it's going to look like at my daughter's 21st birthday. That's just a really good tip there. So thank you for that. Anybody else? Questions? No?
Yeah, Dave.
All right. Yeah. Sure.
Oh, am I talking over someone else?
Nope.
Hey, no. I just wanted to add or maybe ask you, and I know what you're going to say. Just do it, Jamie. And you actually said it to me, believe it or not, back in June. Mm-hmm. I messaged you and was about to leave on vacation, take 10 days off, and you said, "Hey, Jamie, just sit down, write down a vision, what your life is going to look like." And I didn't do it. And I guess I'm here today again, and I'm like, I've kind of been that guy that, I don't want to say flies by the seat of his pants, but he doesn't have a plan, but he's successful. And it's to the point where I'm bad for myself, let's say. As I sit here and look at this, I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, how do I even start to put this into action 1, 5, 10 years, whether it's, I hear so many people talk about reverse engineering, and I'm a pretty smart guy, but reverse engineering for me is foreign. It's like that math with that financial guy that you're talking about, Dave. Yeah. So, I guess my question is, you told me in June, you're like, Jamie, write your vision down. I didn't do it. Here I am again. I'm right here talking to you live. And I guess I'm asking the same question. How do I get started in kind of just layman's terms? The guy Give me an action plan. And I know you did this here, but is it starting and writing a letter to my son who has autism sitting over on the couch? Is it the deeper why? Do I need to get back to that? I guess is what I'm just throwing out to everyone on the call.
I think that's a great question. In your case, this is what I would do. I would take your wife out somewhere, wherever it is that you go. It might be your back patio, or maybe there's a favorite restaurant, or there's some great bottle of wine that you guys really enjoy, or whatever it is that is going to get you in a place where you can be focused and relax and dream a little bit, and just have a conversation.
Dave, I'm going to cut you off, and I'm going to tell you, believe it or not, and this is the same thing again that you told me in June, except there's no kids going this time. My wife and I leave tomorrow morning for Pennsylvania for our anniversary weekend getaway. From Thursday to Sunday, it's her and I together.
Right.
And like I said, the message I left you yesterday, it's kind of like you do this at the right time. And I don't know if it's just with me or what it is, but you can go ahead and talk now. I just want to let you know tomorrow we're at it.
Good. So that's perfect. That's how you do it, and I think it can be a little more challenging, when you have somebody that you have to build consensus with, but when you do it, it's much stronger. It's going to be a much stronger thing. And I think it's just a general conversation. I mentioned that last night Nicole and I went out to dinner, and she was asking me about what I was working on, and I told her about this. And we just started to have a conversation. And I didn't have my notes, and I didn't have, in the area of, whatever, liberty, I was like, what do you want in 10 years? Where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing in 10 years? Do you still want to be working? Oh, and if you do, because she's in wine sales and she loves it, but it's like, yeah, in 10 years, what would be great? Do you still want to be doing what you're doing? I know you want to be involved in the wine industry as much as I want to be involved in this industry. But what does it look like? Is it the same? Are you still doing what you're doing? You're still going out on sales calls, or, are you importing wine? And she's like, wow, I haven't really thought about that. That's a great question. And it's just, it gets the wheels to just start turning. And you start thinking about what's really important and having those conversations about what's really important to you. Is this where you want to live? You mentioned that you have a son with autism. How old is he?
He just said 7.5. He'll be 8 on Halloween.
Right on. Cool. How do you create a lifestyle that supports him? Because that's clearly important to you. Is as important to everybody who has kids. How am I going to support my kids? And make sure that their lives are as abundant and happy as they can possibly be.
Right.
So that'll probably be a major piece of this discussion for you. Because life is a little bit different, and so you have to then accommodate those things. But I think what it's about, in particular in your case, and it was in mine too, I felt like I was doing really well. I mean, by all outward, and this is a couple of years, like maybe if you go back to like 2008, before the economy really tanked, by all outward interpretations, I was doing great. I was making great money. I had a Mercedes. I was a lawyer, so I was Mr. Important. I was working at the 8th largest law firm in the world, so I was super Mr. Important. And most people who looked at my life from the outside were like, man, you've got it all. But I did not feel that way. I knew that there were things that were missing in my life. Right. Turned out they were really related to relationships. That I just didn't have great relationships with people, and so I always felt lost and confused and wanted to hide, and had to overcome a lot of those things. And that was kind of me at the time. But I think it's just about sitting down and talking about how you really want to live your life. What does it look like? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in these categories. I think categories, again, they're questions. They're questions, and they're designed to get you to think. Because again, if you guys decide, okay, well, we want to live in a castle on top of a mountain, great, fantastic. That whole security and investments thing and your income department over the next 10 years need to really be a huge priority in your life. And what starts to happen as you create something like this is you just end up with really clear priorities. And I'll just go back to the way I started this call. There's a reason I did not do this at night. I knew more people would be on if I did it at night. But if I do it at night, I'm giving up something that is important to me, which is my time. And tonight I'm going to my grandparents' house to celebrate my mom's birthday. So I can't do this at night. I have to do it in the middle of the day in order to make sure that I'm in alignment with that and make sure that I'm spending my time the way that I want to spend my time. And I'm fostering those relationships with my family that are so, so important to me. I can't do this at night, right? So I got to do it during the day. So I don't make those sacrifices anymore because I just have a very clear picture of what my priorities are. What's important? You know, is it more important to do this call, have a lot of people on it, or is it more important for me that I do the call during the day when there's less people who can make it and more people are going to have to watch the recording, and at night I go do that? And for me, it's that. That's more important to me. And so it's very easy to set priorities. I think that's another thing that comes out of this is decision making becomes very easy. It's super easy to say no. Nope, can't do that. Sorry, not in alignment with my priorities for my life. Can't do that. You know, or yes, that is an incredible opportunity that's totally in alignment with everything that I want to do. Boom, let's go do it. And decision making just becomes very, very easy. And it's just at the end of the day, it's the lighthouse. It's just sitting there over in the corner. And so your decisions, it's like, should we go that way? And the lighthouse is over there. And you go, no, but the lighthouse is over here. And so we're going to go this way. And decision making becomes really, really easy. And again, I think it helps when things get tough, you know? And if you're in a spot where most people are probably on this call because they're not where they want to be. That's what attracted you to this whole situation. It's what attracted me to it, for sure. I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I was like, okay, so these guys tell me I have a plan for you to figure out where you want to go to build the lighthouse, and then a way for you to kind of reverse engineer how to get there. And that's really what this became for me. And, you know, I'm not at 10 years yet, but my life has changed a lot, and I want to like revisit it. And I think it's important, you know. Well,
I appreciate you doing this. And I wrote down and highlighted lighthouse probably 10 times. I don't know that I have a lighthouse, and that's what I learned today. You know, it's one of those things where, and a light went off when you were talking about Grant, my son, and where he's going to be. You know, I share my deeper why with a lot of people that are trying to get on their fitness journey. And as soon as I share that deeper why, that he lacks social skills that all of us have here, and he may be required to live with me and my wife for the rest of our lives, that my plan is to do the best I can, be the best fit person I can for myself, not only, but my family, to live longer for him. But I guess I've never taken it a step further. And what I mean by that is I've not defined how I'm going to be or who I'm going to be or where I'm going to be in 10 years when he's a teenager and he may live with me. I don't know what that looks like. Right. And I think that all of a sudden that may be the lighthouse that I need to get focused on to be able to walk through this. So like I said, I just appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure. Anybody else? No? All right. We'll wrap it there. That's part one. Part two, we're going to kind of revisit some of these things, ask some more questions, talk a little bit more about some of these issues. And I'll talk a little bit more about the mechanics of how this works and how you can really write it. Really what we're going to try and do with part two is, again, I read you this because I wanted you to recognize that's really the goal. You write this out in past tense as if it has already happened. And so not only do you have a lighthouse that guides your decision making and guides the direction of your life, but you write it down as if it's true. And it is such an incredibly powerful exercise. And it'll probably get you to get rid of a lot of bullshit. There'll be some bullshit that you build in there about a jet or whatever. And, you know, you'll kind of think about that and you'll go, okay, is that really what I want? And maybe not. But I think if you go through this exercise, it'll really help. And I know it's helped me and it's helped a lot of other people. And so I'm very humbled to be able to share it with you. So that's it for today. Thank you for your time again. And thank you for your trust. It does mean a lot to us. And I will, in this case, I don't speak for other people very often, but in this case, I will speak for, you know, the other guys who are leading this movement, leading what we're trying to do, both in the Fit GC group and the Training Camp Live group. And, you know, in Beachbody's culture, but really recognizing that what Beachbody is about is helping people achieve their goals and live healthy and fulfilling lives. That's the mission statement of Beachbody. And if we're doing that, whether it makes people earn Success Club or whatever, that doesn't really matter. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when I'm on that path, I feel in alignment with my vision for my life. And so this gives me a great outlet for all that stuff and a way to help people be happier. And that's really what I'm all about. So that's it. Thanks again. Appreciate your time. And Jamie, have a fantastic vacation. Take care, everybody.